Beetlejuice is awful, awful. I'm going to start by saying that because this film was such a disappointment. I remember when it came out in theaters a few months ago, I almost went to see it, and I am so glad that I didn't waste my money on this thing because I was so upset with what mess that we got from this. That I actually couldn't believe that I didn't hear more people just hate on this film. You know, people have been hating on that the Joker movie sequel. Why isn't I didn't see that level of lividness and outrage on the Beetlejuice movie? I felt like this film, okay, I haven't seen Joker Folie à Deux, but this film, I felt like, kind of deserved it. It felt like, oh gosh, what did they do to make this? Now, I think there was potential for a movie to happen here. If you know anything about the first Beetlejuice movie, it is kind of interesting because it was definitely Tim Burton's really rise to power. He had done Pee-wee's Playhouse before that, and I even remember the trailer for Beetlejuice says, from the director of Pee-wee's Playhouse, and I kind of went like, that's not really much to say there. Yeah, that'd be like saying, from the director of Battlefield Earth. You know, it just, don't get me wrong, Pee-wee's Playhouse is a somewhat decent film on its own right, and it's definitely Burton's style. And that director, of course, has that particular style of doing this kind of darkly comedic, kind of spooky, kind of Tim Burton-y. I mean, if I even say Tim Burton-y, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So now that he has this film, and then and here's the thing, I heard about Beetlejuice 2, or that they were making a sequel to this years ago, maybe even 10 years ago. I remember hearing that they were going to try and make a sequel to this. This film has probably been in development hell for years, and it shows it. Films that have been in development hell, usually by the time you get to the final product, it was probably nothing like its original sequel was pitched, and there was a lot of ideas kind of floating around in this movie that don't really make it rather interesting. Some are actually very interesting, but don't have a good conclusion, and some aren't even interesting to begin with, and don't even have any conclusion, really. Okay, for starters, oh gosh. At first, I thought what was going to happen in this film was that Beetlejuice's wife comes back. Now, if you're not familiar with the first Beetlejuice movie, when Beetlejuice tries to trick the Deeds, one of the main characters from the first film, the daughter, Winona Ryder, into marrying him, he goes to pick up a ring, and there's like a finger already on this ring. And he says, she never meant anything to me. So I get the feeling like, okay, they've established some sort of weird backstory, in a throwaway line, that Beetlejuice once had some sort of paramour. And so then they show that this lady sort of comes back to life, and with a really interesting effect of her body parts kind of assembling herself with a staple gun and literally stapling herself together. That's pure Tim Burton right there. She looks a lot like, say, oh, I forget her name. Is it Sally, Susie? One of the characters from Nightmare Before Christmas. And maybe that's what they were going for. I don't really know. And, yeah, so she, I don't know, I guess she was in some warehouse or something, and then this janitor played by Danny DeVito, who for some reason makes a cameo in there, because, I don't know, he's in a lot of Tim Burton movies. I guess kind of felt like, Tim said, hey, Danny, you want to call? I know you're busy with It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, but hey, can you come and be in this movie? And Danny DeVito just says, yeah, sure, and then he just does it. And, so, not really. And then it turns out, like, apparently Beetlejuice's wife can kill somebody in the afterlife by sucking out their soul or something. And then we see that Beetlejuice, for the last however many years, it's been like 35 years, hasn't it? Jeez. He's like making a living by becoming a bioexorcist professionally, and he even has a staff with those weird kind of shrunken head creatures. One of them we see in a waiting room in the first Beetlejuice, and for some reason they made them into the minions in this film. That was like such a dumb thing to do. They did it anyway. But here's the thing. The actual plot of this movie tries, and I mean tries, to make it about Winona Ryder's character and how she has a daughter now, and she makes a living by essentially being on one of those shows where she talks to the dead, but they show that in fact it's legit. She actually can see ghosts. That kind of makes sense. I kind of buy that. And then there's this thing where she apparently has a producer from her television show who wants to marry her, but she doesn't really like this guy. And apparently in the past she was married to some guy who's the mother of her daughter, and the daughter's played by Jenna Ortega, who you might know as Wednesday, from that other Tim Burton show, Wednesday, which I have to admit was kind of like, okay, geez, is this going to be a connected universe? Well, no, you can't really do that because, same actress. So, this is where it gets messed up. Let's see, Lydia has to come home to her father's funeral. Now, her father was in the first one, and he's played by the actor, I forget his name, I think it's Jeffrey Jones, I could be wrong about this. This actor, they kill off this character in this film, and they do it most unceremoniously. They show like this claymation sequence where he dies, and I kind of went like, and when the claymation sequence starts, I went like, okay, I realized that Beetlejuice used a lot of experimental footage, and it was trying new things, but it knew where to stop as far as being, it never did anything like that. And I kind of went like, why would you do that? Why would you just show that? And I don't know why they did that, but, and then they show this character getting his, not only getting involved in a claymation plane crash, but he gets his head and torso bitten off by a shark, so there's like this section up is missing, and there's like blood squirting out of this thing. There's a lot of blood in this movie for a PG-13 movie. I actually kind of thought that there's a lot of grotesquerie. I thought that was like, okay, I'm surprised that you could have this got away with a PG-13, but here we are. I found out later that apparently this actor was involved in a lot of #MeToo and other kind of things, that it was not really a good person. So I sort of get the feeling like they were just sort of really giving this guy the boot, so to speak. And I felt like that this is sort of like putting this guy in the worst possible light on purpose, which feels really mean-spirited to me. And then but then here's the thing, they don't commit to the bit, because later on in the thing, he actually meets his wife on the Soul Train. Yeah, in this movie, there's a thing called a Soul Train. And yes, they do the whole bit from that television show, Soul Train, and they really commit to this bit. They say this joke at least 4 times, this whole thing about a Soul Train. Wasn't funny the first time, and they just do it. And I'm just kind of going like, wow, the whole movie is like this, isn't this? Yes, it is. There's a scene later on in this, I think this church, where they play MacArthur Park, and it just goes on and on and on, and it's not funny at all. And I'm just kind of going like, why doesn't this work? Because it's just felt like this shouldn't have even been pitched, even in the initial writers' meeting. This doesn't work. Why in the world did you just do this? Did you just do this for the sake of doing this? And yeah, that's the answer. There's actually a fairly decent plot about this kid who is apparently a serial killer and deceives Lydia's daughter, and that should have probably been your main plot, but it feels like it just gets shuffled to the side. It gets resolved so easily. I was so disappointed in this. Oh, by the way, the main characters of the first Beetlejuice movie were Alec Baldwin and Gina Davis's character. Hand waved off. And I actually thought that this one kid who was deceiving Lydia had his parents, and I thought his parents were going to be those two, and because they really went out of their way not to show their faces when they first introduced them, and we found out why, and the reason is really stupid. And yeah, this film just doesn't work. I hated this film. It was such a disappointment on so many levels. This is the most disappointing sequel I've seen since Men in Black 2. And if you see Men in Black 2, that's saying something. When you start off your movie, and when your first movie is just iconic, and it's just so great, and then you do a sequel that just feels like it's written by committee and picked apart, and you have a bare bones script, that's what you get. Do not see Beetlejuice.